broke bones, broke bodies, references, hurts, irresponsibility. You know, living. I found myself living from pillar to post, using to live, living to use. Headed straight for jail's institution, and thank God, by the grace of God, I made it out till I faced the pits of hell. But it is by God's grace, because there was times, you know, I'm sure y'all were there too. There's times you wonder how. Looking back now, it's like, how did you make it out of that?
Yeah.
Like you were saying a while ago, you know, when we were up from the law and stuff, you know, there's just been so many times I can look back and think, especially working in recovery, and I hear somebody telling me this story, and it's like, God, you're not scared to do that. And then I have to check myself, because I used to be right there with them, you know? But I'm kind of like everybody here, I'm sure, ups and downs. My childhood was a good, normal childhood. It's just, you get older, and I was the only child in the family for a long time. I don't know if maybe that had something to do with it. I always had an attitude. My mom, my dad, everybody in the family would always say, "Yeah, it's just your attitude." But you know, it's hard to fix something if you don't realize something's wrong.
Amen.
You know, I didn't think I had no problem, so it's hard to fix something if you don't know anything's wrong. But and change is hard too. Change is uncomfortable. One of my favorite little mottos in my recovery journey nowadays is, there's no growth in the comfort zone, and there's no comfort in the growth zone. You know, if you get too comfortable, you'll not be growing. But anyways, I got out of high school. I married right out of high school at 20, and I had my first child at 20. I divorced shortly after that. 23 years old, had another child. I was not married. Both relationships was very toxic. At that time, I hadn't done anything major, drinking a little here and there, but I found myself at 29 years old trying to raise 2 children and met the demon called meth. 29 years old, single, struggling with 2 children, and meet methamphetamine. You find yourself with a little extra money, a lot of friends. You find yourself with a little enjoyable life, not knowing you're working on a whole death sentence. But I'll make a long story short. This was in 1999. It took me 6 months from the time I met meth to get me some felony charges. And this was in 1999. So from 1999 to 2016, I did the same thing we all do. Out here stealing, doping, running from the law, whole nine. And like you was talking about a testimony is our most powerful tool.
Yeah.
But it ain't what we've done is not the powerful part of it. The powerful part of it is what God's done for us.
Yes.
Right.
So in 2016, the feds came in and the party was over. It was over at that point. 2.5 years later, I turned myself into a federal correction institution where I was to serve a 5-year sentence. I was devastated because I had been clean 2.5 years. When the feds come in, it took them 2.5 years to indict me and for me to have to turn myself in. And I'd made more progress because I'd made my mind up. I'd straightened it, like you said. When I made my mind up, I made my mind up. When I made my mind up, since I was done 2.5 years, I made more progress than I'd made in the last 30. But it was really, you can't see, at a time like this, you can't see God working. All you can see is yourself. All we can see is what we're going through. And I knew something was, I knew that I needed something different and something was missing. And there was one morning, I was on my way to work. I was working as a QA at the chicken plant. I was on my way to work at 4:30 one morning, and I remember talking to God thinking, I'm doing so much better than I used to, but I feel like I should be doing something different or still something missing. Well, at 9:30 that day, the feds come in and started reading an indictment. So I was real confused at this point.
Yeah.
And it was very devastating, for real. I really wanted to be mad, and like we all are, like somebody, like I think you said a while ago, anybody ever, wanted to quit, wanted to give up. So of course at that point I did, because I thought I'd been trying so hard and been doing so good, and I'd done made a supervisor at my work and the whole nine, and all of a sudden all that's just taken out from under you. Nobody wants to walk off and leave that kind of accomplishment. So Of course, the feds started out with a 20-year sentence. They kind of, most 90% agreed to a 10. And then the month before I was supposed to be sentenced, Donald Trump signed a new bill that lowered the mandatory minimum for nonviolent offenders, which I was involved in, which was me. I wouldn't have any violent charges. So they had my sentencing put off, and you know, I know it was God that got me a 5 instead of a 20.
Yeah.
But at this point, I just kind of started wavering between self-pity and positivity. I was positive, and I knew something was going to come out of it. And I can't tell you how many people would tell me, Tammy, just hang in there. Something good's going to come out of it. It's going to work out. Just hang in. But you're in those shoes, you don't really see good coming out right that moment. But it was all part of a plan. I went to prison. It was horrible. It was horrible. On top of just the normal trauma of prison, you've got COVID. COVID came in, so we were on lockdown because of COVID. It was like maximum secure prison during that time. I lost my dad right after I got to prison. But they had offered me, or they had given me the opportunity to take a residential drug abuse program while I was there. And if I completed it, would take a year, 12 months off my sentence.
Wow.
And with fed time, you don't get much. It ain't a 33%. It's a 85. So you fixing to do most of them 5 years. But I did that program, so I ended up doing 3.5. But this program was really rough. It was horrible. It was like prison inside a prison. I don't know if anybody's been to state prison. I've done that too. If you've been to state prison and completed a SAP program or a crime bill program, it's kind of sort of like that, except it's a lot worse in the feds, because the feds has got a lot more freedom unless you're in this program. So there was so many times that I wanted to quit. I remember calling home and saying, I'm fixing to do this year. I'm fixing to walk up out of here now. I ain't messing with this. I'll do this year before I bow down and before I'm talked to and before I have to do the things that they expect us to do. And it was just crazy stuff like the federal prison's like a big compound, and just all the way down to it's a compound rule, of course. Everywhere has compound rules that's not followed. I mean, everywhere does. One of them is something as simple as walking across from one dorm to the next, or from commissary to the dorm or whatever. And if you're in RDAP and you get caught eating, walking across, everybody else in the prison can. But if we got caught, they'd pull us up for it. We'd have a meeting every morning and somebody would hold you accountable. And in the months of being held accountable, it wasn't that we got in trouble for it. It was just the fact of having to learn to accept those wrongdoings, holding yourself accountable for your irresponsible decisions, And it was brought to everybody's attention that, hey, Tammy was seen walking across the compound, in front of 100 people. You just had to be like, well, I'm sorry, I'll check my rules, I'll brush up on my rules, blah blah blah, and that's real hard to do, just like getting clean and like all the recovery, just like working the steps. All those things are hard to do. It's hard to hold ourselves to where we can admit that we are wrong and we are not our own worst enemy. But anyways, the reason I'm rattling on so much about the program is because it was in the program that's got me where I'm at today. I learned so much in this program. The knowledge of addiction, positive attitude, the benefits of setting boundaries, to catch your criminal thinking before it takes you somewhere where you don't want to be. And it also taught me that I was my worst own enemy and to hold myself accountable. And nobody can blame what they do on me, and I can't blame what I do on anybody else. Who in here has ever said, well, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for so-and-so. I'd have had the money to pay my light bill if he hadn't done it. I wouldn't be in jail if it wasn't for them telling on me. And that's how we do. And as long as we live in that, you'll always continue to blame somebody else for our stuff. And that was one of my number one problems was it was never my fault. It was never my fault. So, and also you learn how to forgive yourself. Get rid of the guilt. Get rid of the shame. You have to forgive yourself. No matter how bad it is, no matter what you've done, you can't change it. The past is the past and it cannot be changed. And as bad as it is, as unfair as it is what it is. And all we can do is pick up one piece at a time and move forward. And we can only do that with God's help. But I promise you, with God's help, you can pick it up. You can put it together, you can put it behind you, and you can pick up and move forward, because that's the only way it's going to get any better. It's not going to get any better dwelling and looking at it. But I realized it was my own fault that I was in prison. So I'm here to tell you today we're all worthy of a peaceful and productive life abundantly. We all have hope, we have a future. The devil came to steal, kill, and destroy, and we don't even realize when we're on our way to the pits of hell until we're almost there. And I can tell you too, we have hurts, habits, hang-ups, past trauma, past hurt feelings that's there. They're there. And until we process them and work through them, we won't move forward and make a lot of progress either, because when you hold stuff like that in, it don't do nothing but fester. And I also learned getting rid of all of it would help me be able to pick up my pieces and move forward. I didn't ever try to dissect the pain though until I got in this program, and it taught me that I was my own enemy. I knew I had things that had happened, but I just live on the emotions and drown it with my next move until I learned that I had to dissect that and work through it and pick it up and move on. But I got out of prison, and I decided that I was going to start chasing recovery. I was released from prison in December, and I was certified through the Alabama Department of Mental Health as a recovery support specialist in April. And when I tell you God did that for me in 4 months, He did. That was a 4-month thing. I see people right now trying to get certified, and sometimes, most of the time, it's a 6 or 8 month deal. And especially coming straight out of prison, 4 months later, I was certified. I wanted to go to work at Ross at that time. I knew a bunch of people that was working at Ross. And there again, seeing other people and hearing other people's story is big encouragement. Because I've seen some people work at Ross, and that was my number one thought, was if they can do it, I can. If they can do this, I can. But Ross didn't have anything open, so my first recovery job was Bradford. I went to work at the inpatient treatment center in Warrior. And I worked there until Ross had an opening come available. And I went to work as the outreach worker for Marshall County. And y'all, this was God too, because Marshall County who sent me to federal prison. Actually, the feds were working in Boaz City, but that's Marshall County. So, but to come back and to be able to face those folks and help people that's struggling, especially with the judges and the probation officers, to be able to do that, that's some progress, but it's progress from God. It ain't none of it my progress. It's all, I would have been able to do none of this myself. And so, if I'm confident in knowing that I'm worthy, then no one can take me down. Knowing that I survived the streets, the police chases, the prison trips, then God had a plan all along for my life. I knew I had to get a few years behind me to realize that this was God's plan. At the time it was going on, it was so easy to become negative. And that's just like me turning myself in. There's a few people in here that I know knows me, and those of you that know me, I would have never, ever turned myself in. Never would I have carried and turned especially drive 3.5 hours to turn yourself in. And that didn't really dawn on me for a couple years. And and one day it just dawned on me, I thought, because I did try, I had got with God, and I'd been working, on my spiritual relationship the time I was clean before I had to turn myself in. And it just dawned on me one day that you actually brought yourself and turned yourself into federal prison. What was wrong with you? So it had to be God though, because never would I have ever turned myself in. When I first got life in order, I'd think about the time I lost, and I would get mad at myself just thinking about what life could have or should have been. But you know what? If I hadn't faced them 17 years that I did and 17 years of hell, I wouldn't be where I'm at today. I wouldn't be understanding like I am today. I wouldn't know what it was like to run around out here with a needle in your arm. I wouldn't know what it was like out here knowing the blessings of God when you got it. And I would know what it was like to help some of these people that come to me that everybody else has given up on. Some people everybody has given up on. But it takes people like me, Blind League, these other people that's been there, that's in the recovery. And that's what needs to happen from all of us in here. If you're in recovery, you need to be a helping hand to somebody, because somebody needs to hear from you.
That's right.
I got lost. But the truth is, my relationship with Jesus came about was because that's when I found myself where I didn't have nobody else to turn to. I had walked and I had started working on a relationship throughout. I can't say that it. I'm not saying I didn't always believe that there was Jesus. I just didn't ever walk with Jesus, and I didn't ever work on a personal relationship with Him. There's a difference in believing. There's a difference in being saved and knowing you're going to heaven. There's a difference in a relationship, and there's a difference in a personal relationship where you and Jesus have an understanding. Where He knows you and you know Him, and you know what you do, and we're going to fail. I fail every day. But just knowing that little personal thing between you and Him is a whole different situation than the other situations with Jesus. And it was when I got in federal prison that I really got a relationship with Jesus. And I wouldn't be the person I am today. And I can say I'm proud of the person I have become, and I'm proud of everybody here. Nobody's here on accident. We're all sitting here together, and we can all make it a better place. God said in 1 Peter 5:8, be of sober mind, be watchful. The devil prowls, looking around for someone to devour. And God, that's so true. I mean, that is so true. I run across it all the time. 1 Peter 1:13, God said, therefore, with minds that are alert and fully sober, set your hope on the grace to be brought to you when Jesus Christ is revealed. And I want to be one of those that Jesus is proud of, you know. I want to be one of those that Jesus is proud to see. And do you ever sit and just wonder what it'll be like when you meet Jesus? If you do, you'll think about how we're going to act the rest of the day. You know what I mean? You know, it's all about what we put in our mind. You don't ever put nothing like that in your mind, it don't cross your mind. But if you ponder on what it might be like if we meet Jesus tomorrow, you probably act a little better. I know I do when I remind myself of that.
That's good stuff. Yeah.
Today we can be an example for those who do not know a better way of life. I went from a troubled teen to a criminal-minded adult, not knowing that I was able to be my own light. Jesus is the light, and His light shines through you and me if we let Him. He will not do anything for me that He won't do for you. He took the desire to use. He took my nasty motives away. He taught me to be a respectable mom, grandmother, friend, employee, and so on. But now let's talk about today. With all that being said, I felt like a new creation at that point. I was sure I had got to a point where I could make real progress in all my mess. I made it out of addiction through the prison sentences, and I had a few years sober and a clear mind. And at this point, I did have dreams of a hope and a future. And this is the part of listening to somebody's testimony is valued and most helpful. Like I said, it ain't the part of hearing the same old that we all do. Every one of us has struggled. Every one of us has been down and out. Every one of us has been homeless. Every one of us has been carless. Every one of us has been hungry and jobless and hiding and living with the devil. Maybe not every one of us, but if you've been using, you have. And so here's where it comes in that a testimony does us a lot of good. So, like I said, I went to work with Ross, and I work in the same community that sent me to federal prison. And I assist in helping people, the same people that I done dope with 8 years ago. I do those same people, and it's amazing at how many people will call me and tell me, I've been off work for 2 months, 10 weeks actually, because I had a knee replacement. And I've had people call me. You can ask, my phone continues to ring. And some of them will not talk to nobody else. They don't want to talk to nobody else. They want to talk to me. They want me to help them. And it's because maybe they have warrants. Maybe they have a husband or wife that don't know they're using. No matter what it is, when you build that relationship and you got that bond with somebody, and you're not the only one that can help, but one of few that can help them. And that's what it takes. That's why I say us in recovery is the ones that can help those that's in need of recovery.
That's right.
I started out working as a Marshall County outreach worker. However, today, I'm planning to go back to work, not this coming Monday, but the next. And I cover Marshall, Morgan, Coleman, and Blunt. And I have built some relationships with all the hospitals except Blunt. Yeah, I haven't been able to do much there, but Coleman Hospital, you know, the doctor over there will call me when somebody comes in overdosed. We'll try to get them in treatment. Marshall County Hospital, Morgan County Jail. I go in over there and help people, get them a bed. And Morgan County will release people for me to take to treatment. And when I tell y'all 8 years ago, there's several judges in these surrounding counties that if they knew I was picking you up, they wouldn't release you. They would not release you. There's a couple in here that can vouch for that and know that is the God's honest truth. I come in contact with people that would take help, but because I cannot find them because they're unhoused or they don't have a phone. So the community is in need of recovery housing. Recovery housing is in need everywhere. And I always thought to myself, we do need more housing. Housing for people waiting to go to treatment, or housing for people as soon as they come out of treatment. Like working with my employment, I ran into that problem a lot. You got them, you've got them an assessment, you got them a bed, but it's 7 or 8 days away. In 7 or 8 days, you're not gonna find them if they don't have nowhere to stay. Or they go to treatment and then they get out and then they don't have anywhere to go there. Well, you're gonna be right back the same place you was before you went to treatment in 2 weeks if you don't have somewhere steady to go, somewhere safe. And chances are most people don't. A lot of people's, you know, has burnt bridges. Their families just wants to make for sure that they have made the progress they need to make, or they have needed to make before they allow them to come back home or whatever. I run into that a lot. But my goal is to offer as much support necessary to get people where they need to be. So I always wanted to do a recovery home. And it was a thought for a little while, a quick in and out thought, until April of 2024. In April of 2024, God made a way. He provided me a home that belonged to a rental house that belonged to some of my family. And when I tell you, it just unfolded, and there it was, and it was like, I remember fighting it. I remember telling myself, you know, I hadn't been home at that time, I hadn't been home from prison 2 years. 2 years and 2 months or something. And I remember saying, you know, or I remember the little voice in my head saying, you know, you can't do this. This is not, you've been home long enough. You ain't got no credit, you ain't got this, you ain't got that, you know what I mean? But we can't listen to that. I remember fighting it for several months. And I remember God just, one more little thing had happened, and one more little thing happened, and then all of a sudden, I had some people in treatment that had been in treatment for like 45 days, and was supposed to go to one place, and they had absolutely nowhere to go. And it was kind of like when this house was in limbo, and so I remember saying, well, I need the house for, I don't know, 5 days away or something. I need the house for such and such next Thursday. And so I just agreed that God said, take the house, you know, just, there it is, take it. You need somewhere to put, I had 3 people that was in need. And it was like God said, okay, you got 3 people, take it. And so I did, I took the house, and we were able to find somewhere to buy new mattresses that we could afford to buy. So the first 3 people that moved into the house slept on the floor for like a week on a new mattress. And when I tell you it wasn't easy, it wasn't easy. God made a way and God provided, but it was go and gather and pick. I had a lot of people to make donations. I had crazy mind. I remember going about crazy when we was trying to get it all together. But you know what? We started this house up. I started this house up by myself. Just started it. And here we are 21 months later. So, the house is called the Grace Place because it's by the grace of God. And not only has the house been going for 21 months, there's an overflow transition home in Geraldine that's got 3 people in it with 3 more beds. It's only got 2 people now. 2 people with 4 beds. There's about 6 beds up there. The first 3 people slept on a floor and a mattress, and there's 14 beds in the house now. And when I tell you God will make a way, He'll make a way.
Amen.
He'll make a way. The bigger blessing is coming to be seen. I've got an offer to get a bigger house that's going to be owner finance. I mean, and I haven't had to paw and dig and beg for any of this. It's just fell in place. And it's just like a calling. And every time I try to dip out and get a different work towards a different kind of job or a different kind of career, something comes up and it says, no, that's not what you need to be doing, Tammy. So, at the Grace Place, we make it one day at a time. Most of the guys are here. There's ups, there's downs. There's one day you're calling an ambulance to somebody that's overdosed in the yard. Next week you'll be handing out a 6-month chip or a 12-month chip. You know, none of it's easy. But it's definitely doable and it's all rewarding. It's definitely rewarding, the ones that do make it through. But there is life after addiction. As far as Ross goes, I recommend anybody. I gave her some of my cards she put right here. Anybody that knows anybody struggling with addiction, any kind of treatment, detox, inpatient, halfway, sober living, transition, whatever kind of treatment, we can assist at Ross in helping somebody. And it is a non-profit organization, and every one of our services are free of charge. And it doesn't matter, you can have insurance, you can not have insurance, whatever the situation may be. There's lots of other help through Ross that, you know, I recommend. We've got community centers in a lot of counties. There's one in Marshall and there's one in Etowah. I recommend anybody reaching out to Ross if you're struggling or know somebody struggling with addiction. But I want to say He's always working, even if we don't see it. I can look back and see my past, and I see things that reminds me of God on my side all along the way. God knew I was hard-headed and I had to go to prison. As bad as it was, I had to get to where I am today. The federal agent that sent me to prison called me after I'd been home for 2 years. It was almost PTSD when I looked at the phone and it was his number. I almost didn't answer. But I did answer. And he was like, Tammy, I've been scrolling your Facebook, and he said, you know, he said, I always knew you had better in you. So, not all the police are bad. They are for bad. But, you know, that's an accomplishment that you can't just make in overnight. No accomplishment is made overnight. It's just a long, drug-out process. All of them are. But that's fuel for my fire to continue my mission today. I still struggle with many defects. I hold grudges. I got a potty mouth. I waver in my faith. But at the end of the day, I can give it to God. And I know Tammy is nothing without the help of my Lord and Savior. And I'm so blessed in so many ways. I'm so surprised at the blessings that fall in my path. I face trials and tribulations every day. I make a mess of many things before I decide to give it to Jesus and lay it down at the throne of grace. I figure out every time, after a lot of work, a lot of stress, and a lot of wanting to give up, I realize I need to give this to God. Through my trials and struggles, I do find peace, and I find a way out at that point. I've been home from prison for 4 years, and I have the best relationship with my children, my mom, my grandbabies. And I also have met someone that puts up with me and all my crazy. Yeah. And you know, that's I tell people all the time that he's got to be sent from God, because I didn't ever have one that knew anything about Jesus or a job, and he goes to both, so that's gotta be sweet. But I want to encourage everybody of the good news. All of us that's been on rock bottom, there's only two ways to go, straight up or sideways. Straight up or sideways, that's the only two ways you can go. Once you made it out of the pit, share the news. I'm here to tell you today by the encouragement of others just like me and you. So us, me and you, Celebrate Recovery family, members of recovery, survivors of the storm, we are our hope for the lost in addiction, lost in depression, lost with no hope to ever become successful. I encourage each and every one of you to reach out and share what you have discovered with others. It saves lives one at a time. And I have a little thing that I always share. If I had it. Yes, a thought to ponder that I always share. Our environment, your environment, it creates pretty much everything about you. Like it sets your mood, it sets how you feel at that moment. Pretty much how you feel at this moment is how your next moment's going to go. So that kind of like determines your whole day. So in order to keep a good environment, in order to get a consequence at the end of the day that you wanted to have for the whole day, we have to keep a smooth environment. So your environment creates your emotions. Your emotions create your thoughts. Your thoughts in return creates a decision. Your decisions you get a choice out of, and every choice has a consequence. And your consequences comes from your environment. So it's a whole vicious circle. So always remember, no matter how bad it is, no matter what's going on, I tell the guys all the time at the house, no matter how bad it is, no matter what's going on, at the end of the day, it's pretty much going to be the same. Whether you're in a crappy mood and whether you gripe and complain about it, or whether you just tough it out and make do and get through it. I mean, it don't matter what you're dealing with. You can deal with, in the dope game, you can deal with church service, you can deal with a day at work, you can deal with a day at home stuck with 4 or 5 people, 8 or 10 people, a day at whatever. And how you carry your attitude is pretty much how it's going to turn out. The basics is going to turn out the same either way, so no need in making it worse than it already is. Keep a good attitude, keep a good positive outlook, and just know that it'll work out. And if you can make it through it, there's always a blessing at the end if we try to remain positive and allow ourselves to get the blessing from what we do. And even if it's just a good day's work, you just feel like you've accomplished something, and you feel like you've made it through the day without, strife. And not me. If I get real negative, I'm fixing to sin. I'm fixing to have to ask God to forgive me a whole bunch at the end of the day, because I've still got a little. I still got some gangster a little bit in me, so I have to try to make it for the most part. Got a couple verses, Bible verses. Don't be anxious for anything, but by prayer and supplication. Prayer does work, like I said. Prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, that your request be made known to God, and the peace of God, which surpasses all understanding, will guide your hearts and minds through Jesus Christ. That's Philippians 4, 6, and 7. And do not become complacent or comfortable. There's no growth in your comfort. No growth in the comfort zone, and no comfort in the growth zone. We're all soldiers. We are loved and made to share love. Never think you're not worthy. Never think you're not as important as the city mayor. You are just as important as the next person. Jesus loves you just as much as he does the President of the United States. Amen. Thanks for letting me share.